Hi, welcome to Derek Does. Today, we're doing this. What we're going to talk about today are fedoras. I have a few of them. I used to have many more, but I sold probably half of them because I just don't wear them as much as I used to. I used to wear a fedora every day. I wore it to work, I wore it out. I always had a fedora. I just love them. I just love fedoras. And luckily enough, I was able to get a few from my grandfather who wore the exact same head size as me. Unfortunately, his suits were a little bit smaller, so I wasn't able to keep any of those. But he always wore a suit. He was a suit guy and wore a fedora and still had a lot of his old ones. And they were nice ones too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some of my fedoras, what I have. I don't have that many left, but I have a few, and I'm going to show you kind of what to look for if you're going to be looking for a vintage fedora, not modern fedoras. I don't know anything about modern fedoras, but I do know the vintage ones. So come on, let's take a look. So the first one I'm going to show you is, this is a Disney, not Walt Disney, but Disney. This is Disney New York. And they were one of the many manufacturers of men's fedoras. Most of my fedoras are all from the 50s, maybe early 60s, late 40s. That's kind of the range of fedoras that I have that I like. And I like, usually they have about a 2-inch, maybe a 2.5 brim on them. Usually they're about 5 inches from the top to the, or the bottom to the top. And I'll show you, some of them have trolley cord, some of them don't. This one doesn't. This is definitely a 50s fedora. It's a really nice one. All my fedoras are 7 3/8 in size. Fedoras are all sized per your head. They're not one size fits all. They're not small, medium, large, extra large, like probably a lot of modern fedoras are. Back in the day, you would actually know your head size and you would go and you would get a hat, a fedora that fit your head. And there's also different sizes in that range too. I'm more of what they call a long oval, which means my head isn't round, it's more oval shaped. So a long oval fits my head better than just a regular hat, I guess. So this on this Disney, I don't know if you can see that, 7 3/8. This is not a long oval. This was sold at the Gimbel's men's store. This was called the Oxford. Usually these hats were always named because you would specifically, they didn't just make one hat, they made like, I don't know, 30 hats. And the guy would go in and, well, I'm looking for the Oxford. And, oh, here it is. You know, and they would try it. Things to look for. This one you can actually see when the person bought it, the store then would engrave with foil, like gold foil, their initials. Sometimes it'd be like more than initials, but this is belonged to a GW, maybe a George Williamson or something like that. And this Disney hat, also you can see it's 15. Now 15 means this was a more expensive hat than a normal hat. So this hat actually cost $15. And then there's like 25 hats. Those hats cost more money. And the thing about those hats, the higher the number basically, the better quality of the more beaver hair is in it. The old hats are made mostly of a mix between beaver and rabbit. And the more beaver in it, the more expensive hat, the better hat. The lighter the hat, more water resistant. It just looks better, the finish is better. But this is the Disney hat I have, the Oxford 15 in 7 3/8. And I'll show you what it looks like on. This hat's actually a little bit bigger for me right now because my hair is way shorter than it used to be. Also, the thing to remember is when you have hats, you can pad them. What they would do in the older days, of course this hat's been sitting for a while, so it hasn't been shaped quite correctly, but you can kind of see, get an idea for it. You can actually stuff it with a little bit of paper around the sweatband, and it will push it out a little bit, so it makes it a little bit smaller, so maybe it fits your head a little better. The hat I was wearing, this is a Dobbs. Dobbs is another brand that's been around forever, and they still make hats today. I don't think Disney does anymore. This hat was called the Cushion Air, belonged to a WFL. There's your Dobbs. There's your 7 3/8, and this was sold in Desmond's department store in Southern California. I'm sure I picked this up at a thrift store or an estate sale in California when I lived there. That's basically where you can find them. You can't really find them at the thrift store anymore. I think it's just because that generation of getting rid of their stuff isn't getting rid of their stuff anymore. They don't exist anymore. So if you're lucky to find one, get it, because if you find a nice original, just get it. Things that happen to these hats, this one actually has a little what they call a moth nibble. Can you see that? Sometimes these hats have been sitting for decades, and a moth can get into the box and put little dimples in it, and you can see. I don't mind that myself because I like clothes that have been repaired or not quite new, but that's just me. But this is the Dobbs, New York, the Cushion Air, also probably from the 50s. Not as nice as this one, but this one just kind of fits me better because it's been worn more. What you do when you store them too, you want to pop them up. You don't want to leave them down. Pop them up. And also another thing on vintage fedoras, at least on the felt ones, they'll always have a leather sweatband. So that's kind of a way to tell too. If you're not quite sure, is this a new fedora or an old fedora? If they don't have the leather sweatband, they're probably not. They're not always lined with the silk on the inside. Sometimes that gets just missing, and sometimes the hats just don't come with it. Also, if you find a hat and you don't see the little size tag, if you pull gently down the leather tab or the sweatband, there's always another tag inside it that's from the manufacturer that always will have the size of the hat and then the model. And usually the model isn't like a name model, it's like a number. That's like a, the store, that's the 725 or whatever like that. All right, let's look at some more hats. Also something that you want to look out for is these hats sometimes came with the hat boxes. This is actually a Lee hat. Lee was another manufacturer, and these are great to store your hats in if you can get them in nice shape. This is an original Lee. Obviously, I don't have the Lee hat. This is what I had the Disney hat in. So hat boxes don't have to be specific to your hat. I mean, it's just to hold it. But this is the Lee hat. This next hat is in a Portis box. Portis, again, another manufacturer. I would say this is from the mid-50s, just judging from the box. I think that Lee hat was more for the 40s because it's rounded and not just square. So I'm going to pull the hat out that I have in this Portis box. This isn't really a fedora, but this is the same. This is the summer fedora, basically. This is a Panama hat from Kavanaugh. Kavanaugh is another brand, a very good brand. 7 3/8, and this is marked. It's just marked Kavanaugh. And I'll show you what this is. So these are really nice for the summertime. They're not quite as hot. You still get the airflow going through it, but they look pretty nice. I love a nice Panama style hat. So that's the Kavanaugh. Give you an idea. Let's move on. My next hat, which I don't remember what's in here, this is in the Mallory, or Mallory box. This one's actually probably from the 60s, I would say, or late 50s box, just judging from the look of the fonts and everything like that. But let's see what's inside this one. This is one of my first hats that I've worn forever. This is my Royal Stetson. So this is it's a fancier Stetson than a normal Stetson. It's the Royal Stetson. This is not marked the model. It is from Myers and McCarthy in Fort Wayne, where I used to live at one time, and was owned by a gentleman who went the initials F and E. This one is from a right-handed individual, because you can tell from the crown is actually bent perfectly for your right hand, because it just was always like that. But this is this one. Again, this is a Royal Stetson. Very similar. The hats are different. Obviously, this one's more greenish, or it's faded green. It's been worn plenty of times. It's more of a work hat. Like if you're a worker going to, if you're a carpenter, if you're something else, you would wear, every guy wore a hat. It wasn't just guys in suits. Royal Stetson. The next mystery hat is in the Dobbs hat box. Dobbs is, again, we saw the one Dobbs. Still make hats today, just like Stetson. Oh, my hat I'm wearing was in this box, so we'll move on. All right, my next hat is a Knox. Again, another great manufacturer of American hats. I don't have a lot of, I don't know if I have any of the foreign hats. When I say foreign, non-American hats. They're Germany, they made hats, Austria made hats, Swiss made hats, everybody made hats. But most of my hats, since I am in America, that's what I find are these American hats. This is actually, speaking of non-American hats, this is my Borsalino, and this actually belonged to my grandfather. The hat itself is so light because the quality that's in this is, the beaver must be just amazing in this hat. You can really tell the difference between this fedora and another fedora just from the weight of it, because beaver is so thin. But there you go, Borsalino. This is a very fancy hat. You can tell there. There's the sweatband. This was sold at Kaufman's in Pittsburgh. And right there are my grandfather's initials, WCM. And look, even the size tag is woven. It's not just a piece of paper like the American hats where it's just like printed. This is literally woven into a little piece of fabric. Look at that again. Anyway, and it's a fancier one that they put the bow in the back. Most of the bows, if they have a bow, are on the side. I'll show you this one. And this one's really nice. It's a really tall crown. This one fits me perfectly. There's not even any gap. This is the Borsalino, which I think they're made in Italy. Yeah, made in Italy. So this is an Italian. This is a fine Italian. Of course, obviously, Italians are known for their quality in clothing. Hats were no exception. But there you go. This is the Borsalino. All right, the next one is actually in my Dunlap hats. I don't think they make hats anymore. I'm pretty sure they don't. Or if they do, I don't remember seeing them. But they have been around since the 1800s. This is another summer hat. And this one is kind of just your everyday. This one's from Sears. Sears made hats too. This is just a Sears hat. It's called the Curry. It's the color. And it was imported Picot from 4E's Perfect Comfort. I'll show you that one. Now these are great just for like if you're going to the beach or you're just hanging out. Obviously in a Hawaiian shirt, this really looks good. And you can wear it down or you can also wear it up. There's a picture I saw Bruce Willis has, I believe, this exact same hat. that he would wear a couple years ago, because I was like, hey, that looks really familiar, even with the band. So I think he must have picked one up at the thrift store, or maybe from one of his movies. Costume director probably gave it to him or something like that. But this is another summer hat. I've got kept a couple summer hats just for the summertime, and the rest are more of my dress hats. And my last hat is another Dobbs. This one is also one that I've worn a long time. You can see it's really faded. It's just marked Dobbs. And that's it. It's not even marked, anything like that. And it just fits like that. I kind of love these type of hats because you can get away with just wearing casual clothes and a hat like this, and a pair of your salvage jeans, some boots, and this hat, and you're fine. It blends right in. You don't need a suit, but I do when I do wear a suit, and I only really wore a suit maybe once a year to like a holiday party or something like that. I would always accessorize with a hat, just because I have them. But this is just that kind of your average. You can pick these up. These aren't expensive. Actually, they've gone up a little bit in value since, but you can usually find one of these for like 15 bucks, 20 bucks. I think they've gone up quite a bit since then. But obviously that Borsalino one's probably in like a couple $100 now. I've sold off a lot of my hats. I sold off the better ones, I guess, because they're fancy. Some Kavanaughs and some real Stetson 25s and things along that nature that I just don't have because I didn't need it, because I was kind of getting away from wearing hats that much. But these are my hats, my fedoras. I also have an open road, which is more of a cowboyish hat. It's what the LBJ wore. That's kind of when I'm just outside. Obviously, I want a bit of a wider brim where I live because the sun's pretty intense here. So as long as it's not too hot, I can wear that. But if it gets a little warm, you get a little sweaty, just because you sweat, because it is felt. So it's not a lot of airflow up there, and that's why a summer hat in the summertime, usually when the sun's really crazy, that's when you need it. Things to look for are, see if you can find one that says like 15, 20, 25. Stetson even had a 100, which cost like $100 back when a normal hat would cost $7. So like a normal hat like this, if you went to the store, if it was just a regular old hat, it wasn't a 15, it was just a normal, like that one I just showed you. It was probably like in the $7, $8 range. And then as you go up to the 15, and then the 20, and then the 25. Keep in mind that's 1950 prices, not today's prices. If you go to a modern hatter, which I've been to a couple, I haven't been for a couple years, but I mean, they start like at $250 and up. So if you love the look of the vintage hats, it's way better to buy vintage, because it's just going to be better quality, because they just had better stuff back then. I'm not saying anything against the modern hat. There are better quality stuff. I'm sure they have some really fantastic stuff, but the trouble is you're paying for it with today's money. So it's going to cost you $500 for a really nice fitted hat, where you could pick up a nice top of the line Stetson for about $250 or $300, and that's like a really nice Stetson, like a Stratoliner or something like that. And look that one up. Which I've never had one actually, and even had their own little special box and everything like that. None of the hats I have right now have the trolley cord. I guess I got rid of them all. But I'll tell you what a trolley cord is. It's on a hat. You would sometimes see a cord that ran around it with a little button. And what that does is you could actually unbutton that, unwrap the cord, and you put it into the lapel of your suit jacket. So if you're on a trolley, which they don't have trolleys anymore, but if you're on a trolley hanging on there and a gust of wind comes and blows your hat off, that cord is attached to you. So your hat's just gonna land over there behind you, and you can pick it up and put it back on your head, and you didn't lose it because you're going on a trolley down a street or something like that. That's a trolley cord. I'll show a picture, but that's a trolley cord. So hope you enjoyed this video. It's kind of a short, I guess maybe it's not that short, but it's a video on fedoras, what to look for. particularly what I have, which is kind of what you're going to find, I think, if you actually start to look for stuff like this. Measure yourself. Make sure you know what size you are, because you don't want to buy a 6 7/8 hat and you're a 7 3/8 hat. It's not going to fit. It's going to sit on top of your head like that. It's going to look ridiculous. And you can't stretch these things out. You can stretch them out a little bit, but you can't stretch them out that much. And again, if they have the leather sweatband on it, you're not going to be able to stretch them out anyway, because it's going to ruin the sweatband, just so you know. If you like this sort of content, please subscribe, comment. If I said anything wrong, let me know. Or if you have some more information, put it in the comments below, because other people have been reading it and maybe they can learn something about fedora hats too. I'll see you next time.